Welcome to Housing Developments.
I'm Jim Tobin.
And I'm Paul Lopez.
Paul, welcome to the January doldrums. We had last week. It's cold, and we had more snow in the last week than we had probably in the last 3 or 4 years.
Yeah,
a nice coating of the white stuff. A couple days off for the kids at school, so it's nice. But we're back at full steam this week.
Yeah, you think so, right? I mean, the whole country was blanketed, but
it was cold.
But it seemed here it was just miserable, especially given all the stuff that's happening up on the Hill.
Yeah, totally, right? And then the House is out. House of Representatives out this week. Figures they could at least stay and solve the government funding crisis. Yeah. But it's all right. Yeah, that's right. We'll just hit a pause.
But we did get some interesting news.
We did a lot of economic news last couple of weeks.
Right, economic and some stuff on the government, right? So breaking news as of yesterday in terms of the DeSantis campaign. Do you want to talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, DeSantis dropped out over the weekend. Probably not a surprise to everybody. It was eventually going to happen. I was a little surprised that it dropped. It was so soon. I figured he would try to compete in South Carolina. Nah, he was never going to. Yeah, New Hampshire was never his bag, baby. It's kind of a Nikki Haley, Chris Christie versus Trump world. Christie had dropped out a couple weeks earlier.
Right.
Vivek Ramaswamy also out, and now DeSantis followed suit. And like you said in his announcement, there was no path to the nomination. That voters clearly wanted to give Trump a second chance. So that was a good way of saying it, which now leaves the New Hampshire primary as our next one up. And it really is mano a mano between Trump and former governor and UN ambassador Nikki Haley. So
how does that play out? Do you think it gets a little bit tighter now, or do you think it's still Trump's to lose?
I think, it's definitely Trump's to lose, but it's more likely that Trump wins. I think some polling had him actually above 50% in New Hampshire. Nikki Haley's really got to come really close, I think, to give her a little bit of life. We still have, I think Nevada's next after this, the Nevada caucuses,
that's right,
and then we go into South Carolina, South Carolina, which is her home state. Trump runs very strong there.
Yeah,
I just at this point, if he gets over 50% in New Hampshire, and I think a lot of DeSantis voters, a lot of them go to Trump. A lot of people always thought that DeSantis was kind of Trump without the baggage, but his policies align more with him.
Yeah.
So I think Trump could run up the score a little bit. Do I think some go to Haley? Sure. And I think she has a good showing in New Hampshire. But, there is this kind of feeling of inevitability as we march through the primaries.
Yeah, because I remember the last time that he ran and ultimately run, the consensus was, well, he won because there was, eight different candidates, and everybody else got split up, and but it seems like he's now the juggernaut of the GOP party that hell or high water they're gonna go for him.
Yeah, I think so. I mean, the polling shows that the vast majority of primary voters across the country will vote for Trump, and then you have this weird phenomenon where people who may not want to vote in the primaries for Trump, they say, but if he's the nominee, I'll vote for him. There aren't a lot of people running away from him in the general versus Biden. There certainly are some.
Right.
So we'll see what happens when the New Hampshire tallies are done. But general consensus, Trump wins there. Like I said, then Nevada's next, and then we go into South Carolina.
Right.
Then it's Super Tuesday, right? So this is there is a snowball effect, and I haven't seen anything where even one-on-one that Haley's she may get close, but I don't think she beats him.
Yeah, but the consensus is by March this is over, right?
Yeah,
At least it's looking like it.
Yeah, we're not dragging this out to June like we have in the past. So it's the general election starts a lot earlier this cycle.
Yeah.
So if you like campaign ads, get ready for them because you're going to start getting them in late March and it's April.
Okay, so speaking of dragging things out, the Congress once again did not pass anything in terms of the budget.
Right.
They kind of punted it again with another CR.
Yep. We're into now we're into February.
Yeah.
If not even a little bit deeper, into the spring season, where the Republicans and Democrats are going to come together to come up with the spending packages, the appropriations bills to fund the government. Good news is the government's not going to shut down. Flood insurance will continue. So all the things that we care about are moving along, and we continue to fight the fight on Home Builders Institute, particularly Job Corps, and making sure that's fully funded to continue those youth job training programs. We continue to fight for transformers. We're looking for over $1 billion in money to incentivize transformer production in the U.S.
Yep.
So still a lot of game to be played in the appropriations process.
Does it surprise you? And we talked a little bit about this in the last podcast. Does it surprise you that House Speaker Johnson,
Yeah.
that his job seems relative? I mean, he's been playing a fairly good game where there's not a whole lot of talk about him losing his position as speaker.
Not yet. I think the conservatives are starting to get a little bit restless. They really want something done on the border. Is a way to quote unquote pay for, at least politically pay for, any kind of Ukraine aid that's still hanging out there, or help to Israel. Then you have the appropriations process. The conservatives want drastic cuts.
Right.
You still have to have the president sign it. So there is a game he's got to play. The question is, he's going to end up doing the same things that McCarthy did and lost his job for.
Right.
But a lot of people think he probably makes it through this year.
Yeah.
And if they lose the House, then he's out as speaker and probably out as minority leader too. I mean, I think there's just so much upheaval right now. Unless of course, look, if the House flips Democratic, in the Senate flips to the Republicans and Trump is in the White House, maybe he puts a good word in for Speaker Johnson, right?
Right.
So still a long way to go in this, but he's having to make the same calculations Kevin McCarthy made, and Kevin McCarthy got punished for him.
Right.
Strange.
Right. And you're going to go into greater detail on this as we at the International Builder Show, right?
Yeah, on Wednesday morning we'll have the annual meeting of the members,
Right.
where me and my colleague and friend, partner in crime, Rob Dietz, our chief economist, will do a brand of our we call it Politics and Profit, which is our economic and political update. So we'll be happy to give that. And if you're looking for Rob Dietz for his big economic update, that's the one place you're going to see it while you're at IBS. Yeah.
Right.
So it'd be good to share the stage with Rob and give the members a taste of where we are, because by the time we get to IBS, the presidential politics could largely be over. We know where it is.
Right.
And one more thing I want to add on the ledge side is there's a tax bill brewing.
Oh, yeah.
Which is something we've been working on for a while. It's finally come together. A lot of good things in there for us. But the biggest thing, I think, from a housing perspective is the low-income housing tax credit and putting more dollars into
That pot.
that pot of money, whether it's the 4% bond deals or the 9% credit. We need to build more affordable housing for those at the margins who are looking to get into a safe, decent, affordable rental unit. We all know the value of that, help build wealth, and eventually to move into home ownership. The low-income housing tax credit is the best public-private partnership in the history of housing.
Yeah.
It works. It's great to see Congress. Shout out to JP Delmore on the government affairs team for his tireless work to get that worked into this tax bill. Still a big if whether that bill comes over the goal line, but it came out of the House Ways and Means Committee with a huge vote. I think it was 40-3.
Yeah.
There's a lot of momentum behind it. Clearly the Senate's on board with it. Just matter, does it stand alone? Does it get tagged on to something? But optimistic that we can deliver a win for housing.
Yeah. No, excellent. Let's talk about housing and affordability, because that's a good segment into our econ segment here.
Right.
I guess let's start with the bad news, which
Okay.
let's start with existing
home sales. Yeah. Talk
Oh
about
my
it.
gosh. Okay, so it's the lowest level in 30 years in regards to sales, right? Existing home sales are just around 4 million, which again is a 30-year low.
Wow.
It dropped only 1% in December, but year over year, it's dropped 6.2%.
Wow.
So now, NAR is trying to put the spin on like, this is the bottom. This is going to be, everything's clear sailing from here.
Right.
And we have seen some signs of that, right? But man, that was a number I think that surprised a lot of people, including us.
Well, and considering that it came after the Fed rate cuts, we saw mortgage rates have really come down about over 100 basis points.
Yeah.
Over the last couple of months. I had thought that we would start to see the data reflect that people are entering the market. They didn't like 7.5%, but 6.5% sounds okay.
Right.
But I think it clearly shows there is the rate lock effect continues, which it's good for home building because that means we're still the only game in town. However, this could be one of those things that really kind of hurts the housing market as we move this year and try to get that churn going.
Sure. And you brought something up when you did your interviews last week in regards to the builders are still trying to do what they can do
Right.
in any way, shape, or form,
Right,
right?
right.
Incentives, buy downs,
Right.
they seem that's the key to things to kind of
Right.
bring it down,
Yeah.
either on the the nicer side of
Yeah.
6%,
Yeah.
but it's helping us, but it's not really helping the existing market to really kind of get out there and be like, okay, this is something that we can go into, drop out of our existing home
Right.
and into a newer home.
Yeah, just people aren't willing to trade up, for in some cases, just think about it. If you're in a 4% mortgage, which for a lot of people is the high end of that low range,
Yeah.
you're still trading up 2.5 points higher.
Yeah.
Now, I was just out in Fargo, North Dakota, visiting with our members out there, and they were talking to me about their 30-year fixed rates are closer to 6, and they're actually able to buy down into the 5s, and they've seen a lot of activity in new homes. In that range, because
Yeah.
I think that 6% really is. I don't know what the magic number is, but I know something with a 5 on it rather than a 6 on it's got to be better.
No,
So,
100%. And to your point, let's pivot over to the NHB Wells Fargo Housing Market Index,
Yep.
right? The biggest component to that increase was in traffic.
Was in traffic. That's right. That's
so
right.
last month it up 7 to 44.
Yeah.
Still in the negative territory,
Yeah,
but
right.
looking a lot nicer than it did a couple of months ago.
Yeah, traffic's up. I mean, you have the optimism is up again, and that's what's baffling. So HMI, I think, reacted to the Fed announcement of probably 3 rate cuts.
Yeah.
Economy getting better. Obviously, the bond market reacted the right way. To see that existing home sales didn't respond the same way is interesting. So. Rob Dietz has always said 24 is the pivot year.
Yeah.
It's going to be bumpy, but it's always going to be the second half of this year where we really start to see an acceleration.
Yeah. And quite honestly, the new housing market, it could be a little bit more fluid, right? Because you don't have to sell your other home, right? So those people who are coming in fresh, we're still seeing record first-time home buyers going in and looking at new homes.
Yep.
So I think that's helping our members a lot.
Yeah, certainly reasons to be optimistic. No
Right.
doubt about it.
So then let's talk a little bit about the starts and permitting numbers.
Right.
So the top line number seemed negative.
It did.
Right.
Well, it was.
It was. But really coming off of a very high November number.
Yeah.
Right. So, looking at it, we're still 15.8% above last year's numbers.
Right.
So even though we dropped, 8 to 8.6% last month, again, from very high November numbers, year over year, it's that optimism that we're looking at, right?
Yeah, that's right. I think, and Rob talks about this year, I think he thinks starts are going to be up about 5%.
Something. Yep.
Yeah. So it was an abnormally high reading a couple months ago. So maybe we're just getting back to where trend should be. Not surprising. It's going to be volatile over the next little while. But again, every reason to believe if you take that with HMI, again, optimism is the word I'm using because I just think there's a lot of room to grow here.
And that's what you're hearing. I mean, you travel. Lord knows you travel a lot across the country. I mean, you're hearing that optimism, right?
Remember, the builders are all busy.
Yeah.
Products. People are still selling products. There isn't this just general malaise, if I could, out there. Everybody's building. They're kind of building where they thought they should be. Maybe they pull back a few homes, but generally they're doing just fine.
Yeah.
And so again, reason to believe that, and this is what I preach when I'm on the road, is that especially when I have lawmakers in the room, now is the time to get your house in order to be ready for the demand because it's going to come back. I think it's going to come back quickly. Yeah. And that now's the time to help with the regulatory burdens, help with the permitting issues, make sure that we're opening other new pieces of land, make sure we're making infill developments, encourage all of these things work towards meeting that demand over the next 5 or 6 years.
That's right. And once again, just another shout out, you and Rob talking in depth about both of these topics, meeting the members on Wednesday during IBS.
That's right. Wednesday of IBS. Be there or be square.
Yeah, truly.
That's right.
All right. Well, I think that's it. Is there anything else?
I feel like we covered the waterfront. Yeah, a lot going on in political and policy world. A lot, certainly economics.
Yeah.
We're 5 weeks out from IBS. Again, the show continues to grow. It's I think was it over 700 new exhibitors between the KBIS floor and the IBS floor.
That's right.
Yeah, it's great.
Come
one, come all.
So next week we're going to have a little bit more information in regards to how New Hampshire played out.
We'll know about New Hampshire, and we'll be looking forward to the next primaries. And we'll see. It's ever changing.
Exciting.
Yeah, that's right.
All right. Well, that's it for us today.
Until next time, I'm Jim Tobin.
And I'm Paul Lopez.
See you.
Bye.